everybody. This is Liz from Augusta, and I'm so excited today to share a guest with you and their story. Typically, on my podcast here, I am usually interviewing business owners from Augusta, and all things business. But what you don't realize sometimes is behind those great business owners and their success, a lot of that success is attributed to the army behind them that makes them so successful. And today I have a high performer from our command center here at Augusta Lawn Care Services. And sometimes you meet people in our community and are lucky enough to work with somebody as special as this lady. And I'd like her, first of all, to go ahead and introduce herself to us, where she was from, her family, siblings growing up, and then we'll go from there. So, welcome.
Hi, I am very happy to be here. And um, where do I start?
With your name.
Um, okay, yeah. I'm Brittany. I am Brittani Strong. Um, I've been working with Augusta for I think 2 months now.
Mhm.
I think it's right. Yeah. And I love it. I I'm a high performer in life in general. So it's just a go, go, go for me. And Augusta just kind of fit that bill. And it's been working out great. I've been really enjoying it.
So, tell me about your childhood. Did you have siblings, and were you here in Washington State at that time?
Um, okay. So I am actually from Texas. I grew up, I was born in Florida. My mom was a teenage mom. She was a drug addict, and my grandparents played parents for me when they could. But I grew up, I had a sister and a brother. We all grew up in a very toxic household. There was abuse from mental, physical to sexual abuse. I'm the oldest. I have my middle sister, my little sister, I guess she's middle child, Stephanie, and then my younger brother is Price, and he's autistic. But they're all adults now. We're all adults now. Um, let's see. But yeah, that's where I'm at. As far as my own children, I got married as a teenager, straight out of high school. And my husband at the time was in the Air Force. So I was a military wife for quite a while. He served 4 tours, 2 Afghan and 2 Iraqi tours. And in that time, it was kind of like I was a teenage mom who was a single mom, but not single. But my husband was never present at the time. So it just felt like I was doing everything by myself. And then I kind of just grew up with my kids. And so now they're both teens. They're both non-binary. I have my youngest daughter is autistic, and she got diagnosed at 4. We started seeing signs around 3, and then we got the diagnosis, and we started just tons of therapies, ABA therapy, physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy. And these were all just like tools that we were practicing so we could have her be successful in school. So
Excellent.
yeah,
Well,
that's
that's
that.
a great place to start, and we want to come back and revisit that. But what attracted me to you was hearing you share about some of your own experiences and your own challenges that you have had to readjust and make some real actual adjustments to your life as an adult to cope. And they are the kind of things that if you shared with someone in the room, and until you shared, there was absolutely no way someone would have guessed what has brought you to this place to be such a high performer. So, what you had shared with me was that you were diagnosed with ADD and dyslexia. And can you share with me what brought you to those diagnoses? What were the signs, and how you have transitioned through those into adulthood?
Yeah. Okay. So I started struggling in school around the second grade. Teachers noticed that I couldn't keep up with the kids. Um, and then when I was 8, my mom moved me away from my grandparents. So it took all of the stability and structure I once had away. And then in third grade, I was put in the special ed program. And it wasn't until I was in fifth or sixth grade that I was able to go to a doctor because my mom would like come and go. She would go on benders, and then sometimes she'd come back and sober up. And around that time was the time that she kind of listened to my teachers and took me to go get a diagnosis. And I did. So I was diagnosed with ADHD and dyslexia, and that didn't happen until sixth grade. But it helped me figure out like what my needs were.
Mhm.
I wasn't able to read well with ADHD. I made it very challenging to keep a stream of thought in order, and dyslexia just totally complicated it. But normally, when someone is ADHD and dyslexic, those are kind of like siblings in the uh, when you are diagnosed, they kind of pair, and anxiety. So anxiety comes from like this constant need to like it's like it takes over your brain. You're constantly in this go 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 mode, and that go 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 mode makes you like anxious because you're like, oh, I
Mhm.
got to keep going. Um, so the dyslexia was the hardest part for my reading and the most challenging because um, so like when I see words similar to like cat or cot right next to each other, it just automatically starts getting really confusing for me. So when I started learning the basic tools, the first tool I learned was self challenges. And I learned this in my occupational therapy. And in self challenging, I use my extra energy to be productive. So I can source dopamine. So with ADHD, you're constantly looking for dopamine because we have no dopamine. The only way you can be very toxic in a way that you find dopamine with drugs or alcohol. Um, but then if you um, use a self-challenging tool to manage where you're sourcing your dopamine, you're more productive. So um, I didn't learn this until I had a teacher, and she knew I was struggling with spelling and I wanted to get better and I couldn't find the dopamine. So she kind of nudged me, and I enrolled myself into a spelling bee,
Nice.
just to really challenge that, because I knew that if I challenged myself and I could make it somewhere, I wouldn't feel like I wasn't capable of doing something that I know I can do. I just need to be able to focus, and I need to put that focus in a way that I can find dopamine out of it
Mhm.
for myself. So I have visual dyslexia, which will make text blur in and out of focus and following lines and stuff. Um, I also have dysgraphia, which is a sister to dyslexia. It means that I basically have dyslexia on my hands and my brain. So when I
Wow.
read or I try to write, I will struggle with holding pens. So that's why I
Mm.
would do like occupational therapy would teach me how to like hold a pen correctly. So I went into the spelling bee. I didn't get far. I made it to the second round, but that feeling of like accomplishing something that I didn't think I would ever be able to do
Mhm.
was like the gas to my engine. That is what I needed to keep going, and that's where I found my dopamine, and it felt good to be like proud of myself, because I think when you get diagnosed, you feel like there is no cure.
Mhm.
There is nothing I'll be able to do. This will forever be this way. And I just had to find a way to manipulate what was stopping me to motivate me. And I did that as a kid. I applied this tool throughout all of my school year. I maintained good grades. I achieved a scholarship in sports medicine at the
Wow.
finishing, of my high school career. And then I integrated back into normal classes. I got out of special ed. I still had the diagnosis. I still had all the things. I just was applying it to my life in a way that I could benefit from.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, that's like kind of how I manage. It's probably my biggest tool is the self challenging.
That's fantastic. So, a couple things about that. Now, when you were diagnosed, you had said that your mother was not very present as a
Right.
childhood. So, was it a teacher that noticed some of these things and was able to get you the therapy through school, and it was covered? the cost was covered through your school?
Yeah, so my teacher noticed it, and my grandparents were in Florida at the time, but I was under my grandpa's insurance.
Okay.
So then when my mom came back in the picture, she didn't take me to any therapy. Um, it was mostly like my stepdad who would, or my grandparents who would constantly come to Texas to come visit.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah.
Well, if there is a child listening or even someone that's an adult and they're starting to listen to you and they're thinking, well, yeah, that's what I experienced. I didn't even know there was a name for that. With the writing and the blur, and you would think, oh, I just have something wrong with my eyes.
Yeah.
Was it a therapist that was really in tune to what your needs were, or did they just go through a battery of tests? You thought there was something wrong, they thought there was something wrong, maybe ADD, maybe dyslexia, and then they just go through a battery of tests to see where you were?
Yeah, so I did go through a battery of tests through the schooling, and then they outsourced me outside of the school so I could get the diagnoses. But the test follows you. So you do the test in school, and then you take the test results to the doctor, and they review it. And then they do other evaluations added to that, especially if you want extra therapies. Like schools usually only basically offer like speech therapy, sometimes OT therapy, depending on the district of the school, but ABA therapies and physical therapies are normally outsourced.
Okay. So, leading up to today, what I see when I came into the office one day, you told me, "Hey, I need to be in constant motion. Could I bring my board?" You called it, and I
Hmm.
said, "Absolutely. Whatever helps." And so I come the next day, and one of the guys he comes over and he goes, "It'll be worth the sacrifice for you to come over here. You've got to see this." And I came over. You were on the phone helping a customer, and you were on a board that looked like a skateboard, and you were just
Hmm.
rocking back and forth while you worked. And, can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I have a problem with staying still. I can't stay still. Sometimes, like what I'm doing right now, is I'm sitting on my feet, and that helps me like manage that motor.
Mhm.
But when I'm wanting to focus on work and when I'm needing to do something, it's either I my partner is the one who made the board for me. He noticed
Mhm.
that I like to stand up, I can't sit down. And so he was like, why don't I just make you a balance board?
Mhm.
And then you can move and work. And I was like, okay, I'll try it. And at the time, I was working at a farm, but I had a stand up desk and I was just doing like a lot of computer work. And so I started using this board there and I realized that I really do, it stimulates that part of me. I always say, as long as my legs are moving, this can keep moving in
Got
the
it.
one direction. So it's like I have to separate my body between movement and thought. And the board just helps me move. So I use an Nalgene water bottle that's wrapped up in tape. And I just put it, it is a skateboard and it has like two little blocks at the bottom. And the whole point is to make sure the blocks don't touch the ground and the Nalgene bottle stays in the middle. And it's a lot of things going on. Like at Augusta, some of the coworkers, they'll like comment to me. They're like, how are you typing, talking, drinking, and balancing on the board? You're like doing so many different things at one time. And I'm like, I don't know how I do it. It just works for me. And this is just what I do.
It's incredible because, people could use all these things as an excuse. They could, use them as an excuse that they wouldn't be able to work. I can't
Yeah.
focus, so I can't do this. And the fact that you can do all those things that an average person would have to, completely slow down and think through all those motions is something that comes natural to you, but it has been trained into you as well because you've taken those weaknesses and made them real strengths. Others look
Yeah.
upon them as strengths. So, when you were a child and they diagnosed you, did they give you any medication to help support while you did these, therapies?
Yes, they did. I was prescribed Ritalin in the beginning, but it made me really sick. And then later in my, closer to my teen years, I got on Adderall. And then when I had my first child, I did not like the way that Adderall was. I had postpartum depression. And so
Mm,
being on Adderall and having postpartum depression was, it didn't work out for me. And
mhm.
so I just realized that I just needed to not do any medications and I needed to build my toolbox. And so
Right.
that's kind of what I did.
Yeah, impressive. And really, I just acknowledge you for that, doing that for your child too. Were there any big side effects coming off of that for you?
There was, it was a lot of like trying to rebuild a sleep pattern was probably the hardest part.
Mhm.
Because when you're on Adderall, sometimes you just don't sleep. And then when you come off of it, it's like your body wants to rest, but it's so used to not resting and
Mhm.
like staying. So you get like jitters, and sleep was the hardest thing for me. I did not get a healthy sleep pattern probably till the past 3 years.
Mhm. Mhm.
I'm very strict on my sleep pattern. Like I play hard, I do a lot of things, but I'm really conscious of when I need to rest.
Yeah, can you tell us a little bit about how you've structured your day and your life, really, to help with these things?
Okay, so structure is everything to be successful. Um, eh, I, for example, probably the week before I started working at Augusta, I made it very intentional that I was going to reset my schedule and set healthy like structure of my mornings. So I wake up at 4 a.m. I know I have a solid hour to just focus on myself so I don't have to focus on anybody else's needs but my own.
Mhm. Mhm.
And then that way I don't feel guilty or stressed, or I'm not giving, my partner or my kids the needs that they need in the morning. So I just have a solid hour for just me. And I can take my time and not rush. But I did the exact like four things every morning, and they have to be in the same order, and they have to be productive for me. I know I'm doing these things so I don't have to do them when I get off of work. So
Smart.
I feel, yeah, so I feel like I'm accomplishing what I would finish at the end of the day at the beginning, and it eliminates that anxiety and stress. So I focus on, is the kitchen clean? Did I wash my hair? Did I do laundry? Just like the little tiny chores that could be done in quick little increments. And then I
Mhm.
set timers. So I'm like, okay, I know I'm going to focus on this for 5 minutes. So I set 5 minutes on my timer, and I'm like, you're gonna finish all of these dishes in 5 minutes. And then you can go to your next thing. And challenging myself to get something done within a certain amount of time
Right.
will help me stay on track, get that thing done. I have 5 minutes, and then I know I'm done with it. If I don't have a timer and if I don't stay on schedule, I'll start the dishes. Then I'll end up at laundry 2 minutes later, never finish the dishes. And I didn't finish anything, but I just spent an hour wandering around the house, not getting anything really done. So
Yes.
the timer is everything. It's one of my tools. I constantly am like timing myself. And then like I challenge myself, can I do it faster? Can I get the dishes done faster than the 5 minutes? And then if I do, then I'm like, there's this little burst of dopamine that I'm like, oh, I did it.
I love it. That's
Yeah.
fantastic. Have your kids benefited from that as well?
Yes, absolutely. Mia, my kid who has autism, she has to have structure. She has to be on a time schedule. We need the structure to be successful, or we just fall apart together. So we both need it. They both, they benefit from it
Yeah.
100%.
So speaking of Mia and her autism, what were the first signs of that for you? And how, secondly, how have your challenges helped you to help her? And how has your family adapted to that and her treatments?
Okay, so hers was nonverbal. Right away, she just wasn't talking. Um, and that was kind of a red flag for me because I just knew that she needed to hit certain milestones that she wasn't hitting. And 3 is kind of that age where the milestones should be being hit, and they
Hmm.
weren't. And so the moment I saw that, it was kind of like a red flag for me. And my pediatrician at the time actually was she's my aunt, my step aunt
Mm,
from my
nice.
stepdad. Yeah. So I had a really good pediatrician who would listen to me.
Hmm.
And that's like the hardest thing, especially for females. They get misdiagnosed a lot, and they just get put under a blanket of other things that might
Hmm.
be. And so I just had a really good doctor who listened to me and what my kid needed, and we figured out that she was autistic, which has been great. I It's a lot of fun, especially as she's older now, and she like can like just she's a truth bomber. Like she will throw some truth out there, and and it's not always polite, but it's just true. So you're like, well, at least she's honest. Like,
Yeah.
and we
Can you can you just share with us some of the symptoms of someone who is autism and the challenges they have, and then actually what makes them amazing?
Okay, so the challenges are going to be being misread, and not understanding that the the neurotypical is not going to understand a neurodivergent because our brains are two toys, apple and oranges.
Hmm.
And being misunderstood is probably the hardest part for Mia, especially now that she's a teenager and she's in school. Even as like I homeschooled for a long time because she struggled in elementary school because she has pica too, which is it's sistered with autism, but it's a sensory. So she would have to have like a chewing necklace, but like we would go to all these therapies, we'd find all these tools, and she would get picked on a lot for those tools and not just like being understood as being neurodivergent. So there's just
Hmm.
like a lot of people just don't understand these two different brains and how they work. And I kind of have never sheltered Mia from what she has been diagnosed with. It's always been very like, you have autism. Your brain works this way. And that's okay. It's just different brains. So she understands, and she spends a lot of time trying to explain to people that this is who I am, and I understand you can't absorb that.
Yes,
Um, but she's very outwardly, like she doesn't shy away from her issues. When she was younger, it was harder because kids are just mean and they would tease her,
for sure.
especially when she had her necklace and she had to eat. There's been so many times I've gotten calls from the teachers that would say, oh, Mia ate all of her school supplies. Like she
Oh
would eat
no.
everything. And then we have to go get her stomach pump, or we had to go get x-rays
Oh
because she would be
no.
eating, yeah, things that were so dangerous to her. So we had to give her this tool, but a chewing necklace, so she would stop eating all of her school supplies. And it would frustrate me as a parent because I'm like,
No kidding.
how did we eat all of the supplies? Like why?
Yes.
um but we learned through that. Now she doesn't do that as often anymore. As she's getting older, she can control her urges, but as a
Hmm.
kid it was harder for her to understand what an urge is and how do we use a tool so we don't hurt ourselves.
Hmm. Are medications typically prescribed for those with autism?
No, just because there's not too many medications that could, autism is such a broad scale, and
Exactly.
there's really no medication that can help. Like, it, if you medicate for one thing, it may mess up another thing. The best
Hmm.
thing that has worked for me is autism has been OT therapy.
Hmm.
And she does a lot of music therapy. And it was one thing that I went through with Mia that I never thought would be a thing, but she would listen to these music that was like, it would be like Beach Boys, and then it would
Hmm.
have random noises through it. So it was disoriented, and
Yes.
it was not fun to listen to. But when she would listen to it, her behavior would alter for sometimes for a week straight. She would
Wow.
like, the first time she did it, she came home from therapy and she told me and my oldest, I love you. And
Wow.
she had never said I love you. And she doesn't know like she knows affection, she doesn't know how to share affection. So she
Hmm.
has empathy and affection, she doesn't know how to give it to somebody.
Right.
And we know that. And so the moment that she like looked at us and she just said, I love you. And we were in the car, and like me and Michaela looked at each other and we were like, she just say she loves us. And then we were
Wow.
nervous because we were like, what is wrong with her? What happened? But it was from that just listening to some weird music.
Hmm.
And so those little tools that do nothing for me
Hmm.
and will probably do nothing for you, but for somebody who is autistic, just a little thing like that can totally change who they are for like a week straight. And that blew my mind. But that was probably the biggest tool that I saw help Mia was the listening therapy.
Have you had conversations with your sister as you've become adults about hers?
Um, no, not too much. My um my sister need my sister she has a lot of anger from like
Mm,
childhood trauma.
for
And
sure.
when I went through my therapy when I had postpartum depression, and I went through 3 years of childhood trauma therapy. And in those 3 years, I learned so much and had to realign myself.
Right.
And I grew in that moment. And my sister doesn't have children. And I think she's still in a moment of just growing.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that's that's
Yeah,
where
so
I'm
it's
at
not
with
like
that.
so it's not like you could have a conversation and just be like, "Wow, this and wow, this is my journey and this is how I've healed and this is how I've experienced
Yeah,
this."
because
You're
she's
not
just
there
not
yet.
there yet. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I want to step over into your career and
Okay.
what you did for your career before you came to us, which was very fascinating, and how you came to this place of self awareness where you knew the word you used with me was that you had hit a ceiling, and you felt
Hmm.
that what you had to give and for your own personal growth, you couldn't go beyond that ceiling unless you made a change. So, could you tell us a little about what you did and how you traveled through that time?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, in the beginning, before COVID, I actually owned a daycare, and I ran it through the Navy and through the state of Washington. And then Mia needed to be homeschooled, so I stopped doing daycare. And then COVID happened, and I had to figure out what I was going to do while everything was shut down. And I started working in the cannabis industry, and I started working for a farm. And I worked in this industry for years, and I learned quickly that the ceiling was low and that the industry was a race to the bottom. And it was very defeating because I was in a place where I was a director, and I had a whole team under me, and I would build these people up and try to, motivate them. And I realized that the environment was so toxic, and it was so hard to, like, I'm touching all the ceilings and doing all the things and
Yes.
progressing. And that I couldn't, I couldn't like get ever like what I wanted to build wasn't, it wasn't going anywhere. Working with stoners can be difficult
Mhm.
because my motivation to thrive was like going 60 miles per hour,
Yeah,
and their motivation to thrive is going like 20 miles per hour.
right.
And it was like really defeating because I'm like, come on, you guys, we can do it. We can do all these things. We're fully capable. And everybody's like, no, I'm just trying to chill. And I'm like, not trying to chill. I'm trying
Right.
to chill when I'm not at work. Then
Right,
I'll chill.
exactly.
But if I'm taking effort to go somewhere and to do something, we're doing something. Like,
Yeah.
I don't want to like show up and chill. That's not my MO. And it was just so defeating. And so I just moved to Bellingham, and I was like, I need to find where I'm going to put my energy into. I want to find what I'm doing with my energy. And it was just kind of like throwing out some eggs out there, seeing what basket I was going to land in. And then Augusta came. And honestly, it was really hard for me. I like did the interview and then went back home and told my partner, I was like, this is so weird. I feel like I'm in a stimulation where everybody's just so happy and there's so much positive energy happening, and everybody's like gun ho to do all the things. And I was like, I don't know if this is real. I think this is fake. And then I started working, and then I was like, oh no, it's real. It's real. Everybody's amped all the time. And that's like some
Mhm.
energy that I just live in all the time. And so it was just a total different change to like go from where everybody's just really chill to like where people are motivated. And I couldn't ask for any better. So I'm really happy with that.
So it probably really surprised you when you came for your interview, and I'm I'm telling you that we actually have Audible accounts and that we are all seeking to make ourselves better. And you suggested a book to me, and I was just like, I'm like
Yeah.
grabbing up anything you're wanting to tell me. And I immediately bought that book that day and read that
Yeah.
book and then was able to, share back. And so I guess that was pretty shocking to you too, from what you had just been coming from.
Oh, yeah, 100%. 100%. I went back home too and I told my partner that I was like, oh my gosh, I told her about Permission to Feel and she was talking about books and stuff and like books that like give you something to like walk
Yes.
away with.
Yeah.
Yeah, I appreciated that a lot.
So one thing you had mentioned to me also is that when you reach this ceiling in the industry, what my understanding was, so marijuana is now legal in Washington. That took a long time for that to come about, and
Hmm.
there are marijuana shops everywhere.
Yep.
We have one road here where there's 3 shops, and I specifically talked to one owner one day because he was one of our customers at Augusta, and I said, "How do you make yourself different?" Because he told me we all charge the same amount. And
Hmm.
I'm like, "So how do you ever have a competitive advantage? And how do you can't run a sale? You have to all make the same amount of money. You got to pay for this stuff." And he said, "Well, the only thing is to set ourselves apart by the way we look and the way we present ourselves." And so then when I met you and you're telling me about it, that you started to travel and you went to the conventions and the seminars and
Hmm.
all these things, what you said to me was that when you met the people at the top, you realized, wow, they're not even where I am. They're not where I'm seeking to be, and they're not even at my level. Can you tell us what that was like for you?
Yeah, that was a wake up call. So I went to Interchange, which is a marijuana convention that travels nationwide. Um, And so I went to this, and it's like a whole weekend event. You go, and as somebody, I was selling weed at the time, and you go, it's where you meet up with all of the stores, and you try to convince them to let you have a spot on their shelf in their store. And these are all owners. So anybody who is going to represent a farm is with I was with the owner of the farm. He just brought me along because I'm the salesperson. But they're all owners. They're all owners of the stores, farms. Everybody is top notch there. And I met some great people, but the energy that was there just wasn't really what I wanted it to be, because
Mhm.
I want to be in a place where we are creating a better product. And when we're
Mhm.
all selling at the same price, there is, you don't have to be better. You
Right.
don't have to create a good product because it's the same price as the really crappy weed.
Yeah.
So it just didn't feel like it was a challenge. It felt like it was a popularity contest,
Exactly.
and I'm just not about that. I want to like I I want to be able to be proud of something because we did that and we made it what it is, and I can like fully sell that and get behind it. And I couldn't with this industry because it is set at a blanket cost, that everybody's selling, and it is just about like being popular, and I don't want to be popular. I just want to
Yeah.
like, that doesn't fuel me. That fuels a very toxic industry that will continue to be what they are. And I
Mhm.
just really wanted out of it. After Interchange, my partner came with me to Interchange. Well, he stayed in the hotel, but he was there. And every day I would leave Interchange and come back to the hotel. I was just like, this is just the level of toxicity that I thought was at a farm level or a store level was at a whole industry level. And at that point, I realized I can't change this.
Yeah.
I can change a farm, I can change and work to better that farm, but I cannot change the entire industry. And at that point, I just was kind of checked out.
So what would you say to someone that's in the place you are? They feel like there's nowhere to go in the company they're in. They've tried so hard, no matter what everybody else does in the company, to try to better themselves. And then every time they're at work, to make revenue for the company and be a fantastic employee. So what would you say to them when they're stuck like this and they need to get out?
I would say you're not a tree. You're not a tree. You can leave at any point. I have many people from the farm I was just at who have currently left their positions. I have people who my partner has taken from their positions and get employed them at, the solar factory he works at. Totally different industry, but
Mhm.
you can leave the industry. You're not a tree. Get up and walk away. And it's hard to do that because you're so scared to like leave what you've known. Um, and it was hard for me. It took me a minute to
Mhm.
walk away. And everybody else who I've seen walk out of the industry, you will get to the point. And it's just how much time are you going to waste trying to get to that point?
Mhm. For sure. For sure. Well, I appreciate you sharing that. You had to be really brave to do what you did. But what really amazes me about you is that all through your life and all these challenges, even one of those things could have been made an excuse for you to not try to give up and to be a victim. And not only have you had one but one after another with your childhood, the challenges of that, somebody would just roll over and die as an adult because they've been hurt so much and they have so much pain from their childhood. And yet you took that, the dyslexia, the autism with your child, the ADD, and everything that surrounds that and the challenges. It makes life a challenge, and you have really produced something beautiful from that, which is very plain to see on you and the
Mm-hmm.
energy around you. It's really
Thank you.
beautiful. Can you share a little bit about how you've managed the anxiety?
Okay. Um, so my anxiety is managed with music is like my top one. So I will have like headphones in all the time, just listening to music. And then listing. So I will list all my tasks out in a day, and that helps me visualize what my day looks like, and so I can execute it. And honestly, marking off a task of my to-do list is a dopamine trigger, so it's just
Mhm.
like instant like gratification.
Yep, yep.
And then journaling. I journal is probably one of my biggest anxiety tools because anxiety is just like a flood of thoughts and emotions that I know are out of my control. And the only thing I can control is pen to paper. So if I write out every little thing that is making me anxious and I can visualize it and I can see it, it's no longer like flooding my brain, and it's on the paper, and I have control of that paper, and I can like close that journal and I know it's there and I can revisit. And then I like to revisit my journal a lot if I go back and I see the things that I wrote down and I was struggling with, and then I can be like, oh, it really wasn't that heavy.
Yes.
This little thing I wrote down wasn't as heavy as it felt in my head. And then I
Mhm.
can feel good that I don't feel that way anymore because I'm
Mhm.
like, okay, I'm no longer anxious over that. This is just very temporary. Um, and then like boundaries. So like I set very strong boundaries on myself, so I don't reach burnout. If I
Yes.
don't have boundaries, I will burn out. And then once I burn out, then I require like my weighted blanket
Yep.
to like
Okay.
weigh me down. And then therapy. Um, I think therapy comes in many forms, but I've been in active mental health therapy since 2005, and I've been with my trauma therapist. She's in Anacortes. I've been with her since 2017. So these are just all things that I will use with my anxiety.
Mhm. So when you say that you went into therapies, is this something, this asking for people that are out there to deal with their anxiety and things, where do they start? I mean, do they have to check with their insurance to see who covers it? Is it something they should look for weekly, monthly?
So I know in the state of Washington, minors can get mental health therapy through the state if you don't have insurance. If you do have insurance, you can see if your deductible will cover that. I had insurance for a while that it did cover. Um, and I know with therapy, that is like the biggest thing for people is like the cost.
Hmm.
But I try to tell everybody that this is an investment. So you're either going to invest in yourself or we're going to keep buying lattes. Like, which one are we doing?
Yeah, that's good.
Like you just got to go, you kind of got to make at that point. Can you hear me still?
Yep, that's fine.
Okay. Okay. And I think the best way to start is to go online. Figure out what you want to work on, and then find a therapist who specializes in that. There's so many different types of therapies that you can specialize in, and but if you go into therapy knowing that you have a goal that you want to reach, whether it could be like, I just feel this certain way and I don't know why I feel this way and I need somebody to help explain that to me.
Hmm.
um, my biggest advice with therapy is go to therapy even if you don't have something wrong. Therapy isn't to fix yourself as if something's wrong with you. Therapy is viewed as a way to learn about yourself. And I've learned so much about myself, and it's the only way that you can evolve as a human is to learn. And the only way we learn is to study. So I encourage everyone to get out of your own way and go learn about yourself. That's what
That's
therapy should
very
be.
helpful. Yeah, much appreciated. So in your journey to healing and as you continue on, what are the things that you bring into yourself for your good energy and for your healing? Do you have podcasts, sermons? Do you have things like, do you go to church? Do you have a certain community of people that support you? What do you bring into yourself to help you right now?
Um, so I think what I bring most into myself is like I I'm a wood paneler, so I do whipping, and that gives me so much. And then when I can share that with somebody, that it's empowering. It makes me feel confident in myself. It
Hmm.
makes me trust myself. It challenges me to do things that are scary.
Hmm.
Um,
I don't wanna
so
get into that too much because I wanna
I
do a
know,
whole interview on
I
this.
know,
It's
I
a very exciting.
know.
So, okay, you have
Yeah.
a
So
task that you do.
so yeah. But so for ADHD, I would say like if you could read one book that will teach you everything you need to know about a neurodivergent, would be it's called Finish What You Start. It's by
Okay,
Peter Hollins.
thank you.
It's an amazing book. It's probably one of the first books I read when I was trying to start like a career and try to be like an adult and not
Mm,
just a parent.
mhm,
Was because I had to learn how to like really get my stuff together and figure out how
mhm.
to like manage life with
Yes.
ADHD. So that was a great book. I'm not listening into any podcasts right now. I am, however, very hyperfixated on this band. It's called The Idols. They have a great message. It's a lot to do with anxiety, so it's
Okay.
just great. Yeah.
Okay, that's good. So music, you're spending time on music and you don't really if you listened to podcasts and YouTube, motivation and all that, would it cause more anxiety for you because of so much coming in, so much stimulation?
Sometimes, yeah. So when I like to tap into things like that, because if I listen to it too much, it will like I will hyper focus
Yeah.
on myself a little too hard.
Yeah.
But when I am struggling with like managing like certain parts of me that I can't manage that well when it comes to like getting super distracted and stuff, I will go tap back
Mhm.
into, some podcasts or books. Books are mainly my thing, um, more than podcasts.
Okay, that's good to know. Yeah, so I want to thank you for today. We come from all different walks of life and different experiences. And, I don't think that we all come together by accident. But how we feel here at Augusta is that we might not be in each other's lives forever. But while we are, we want to help each other be the best version of themselves they can be. And when we all clock in and we come here, it's like we're not, our time is not our own. So we're all here, we're just working hard We all work for different reasons, but we need to make money to provide for our families. But when we come here, we're 100% about taking care of the franchisees and their
Mhm.
businesses and each other and trying to wrap up everything for a shift with each other. So you're like me, you like to lock in and work, and that is why, we call it P for P, pay for performance. You hardly have worked here very long and you're already making pay for performance, and it's just a testament to the kind of person you are, and that you take care of business and you lock in and you can get things done. And so it just takes all kinds at Augusta. Everybody brings their different flavor, and we love to work together to build something great, and in the meantime to become better ourselves. So is there anything, last word, you want to share to encourage other people? It's not an opportunity that we get often to have a platform to share, and I'm sure over time with what you've gone through that you've wanted to share some things of encouragement for others.
Yeah, so I think what I'll finish with is going to be my favorite quote, which
Excellent.
is from Peter McWilliams. He said, "You have to be comfortable with being uncomfortable."
Beautiful. Except it's not very comfortable.
I know.
Easier said than done.
Yeah.
Well, that is great. Well, thank you for your time today. We so appreciate that you took the time to share with us. And
Yeah.
folks, stay tuned for part 2, because we are going to learn from this whip master something very unique and very exciting, and we'll be sharing that next time together. So thank
Yeah.
you so much.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
You too.